Having low vitamin D levels has been associated with so many different things, from having an early death to cardiovascular disease to having low energy. Find out if you are getting enough vitamin D next. Hi everyone, Floyd Meyer here, and today we're going to be talking about vitamin D, which vitamin D isn't actually a vitamin at all. Really, it's an essential steroid hormone that is going to be affecting a huge part of how your body works and functions day to day. In fact, vitamin D is going to regulate about 1,000 different genes inside of your body, which is totally crazy. So if this ends up being somewhere between 1/20th and 1/25th of your entire genome, meaning this is going to regulate about a 20th of everything that makes you you. So that's why it's so important. And having low levels of vitamin D has been associated with a wide variety of different diseases and conditions. Things like heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, diabetes, having low energy, having weight gain, just dying early from anything. All-cause mortality increases when you have low levels of vitamin D. It increases how fast you age. I mean, so many different things. This is so important. And you may be thinking, oh, well, I get outside and I drink some milk every once in a while, so my vitamin D levels are probably good. It's not like I'm walking around with rickets or anything like that, which was what was originally associated with vitamin D. But unfortunately, they've done these population-based studies, and about 75% of our population is deficient in vitamin D, which is just totally crazy considering all of the different things that it's been associated with. If you're not having enough levels, your risk of all of these things goes up significantly. And if we have 3/4 of our population deficient in it, this is something that really needs to be addressed and something that we really need to be talking about. So how do you get vitamin D? You really have two main options. It's either you get it through the sunshine or you can supplement with it. So when you go outside and you're exposed to the sun, you are going to be producing vitamin D. So what happens is the UVB radiation, which is coming from the sun, the sunlight, and that's the radiation that ends up burning you if you are outside for too long and you're not wearing any sunblock. This UVB radiation is going to activate a chemical in your skin, just below your skin, and that is going to start the process of producing the end result, which is going to be vitamin D. So, getting outside is great, but there are a lot of things that can affect how much vitamin D you produce, even if you are getting outside. So there's 4 main things that are going to affect that. One of them is going to be your age. So the older you are, the less vitamin D you're going to produce. People that are 70 years and older are going to produce 4 times less vitamin D than someone that's in their 20s. So this is going to be, as you're getting older, it's going to be more and more difficult for you to produce enough vitamin D, even if you are getting outside and exposed to the sun. Another thing is going to be how much melanin you have. So how dark your skin is going to affect how much vitamin D you produce. People that have darker skin are going to produce less vitamin D than those people that have lighter skin. So it's even more difficult for those people to produce enough of it. Another thing is how much body fat you have. So vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, meaning you're going to store it in your fat. So if you have more fat around your body and in your body, then you're going to have more vitamin D to fill that up so that you have enough that's actually circulating around in your blood, being active. And then the other thing is where you live. So where you live in the world is going to affect your vitamin D production. So people that live in northern latitudes, people that are in the upper United States and Canada, are going to have a much more difficult time producing the vitamin D compared to someone who lives in a lower latitude like where I'm at in Florida, or if you get closer to the equator, it gets easier and easier to produce vitamin D because you're exposed to more UVB radiation. So all of those things, and then the other thing is how much skin you have exposed to the sun, how much clothes you're wearing. If you're wearing long sleeve shirts and pants, you're going to obviously produce much less vitamin D than if you're outside in a swimsuit. And so you have to be able to actually go outside, get the sun exposure, not be too old, not have too much body fat, not have too much melanin in your skin, and live in the right latitude in order to actually produce enough. And that's why, it makes sense that 75% of the people are deficient, because very few people are doing that or are even able to do that to get the adequate amount of sun exposure to produce enough vitamin D. So that brings us to supplementing. Luckily, supplementing with vitamin D is super easy to do. It's a very, very cheap to produce. You can find it basically everywhere. You can buy vitamin D3 in basically every store, any Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, Costco. They all have very large bottles of vitamin D that you can buy for pretty cheap. So that makes it very easy, but how much do you actually need to take? So currently, the RDA, or the recommended daily allowance, is 400 to 600 IUs a day, which might sound like a lot when you hear that, but unfortunately, it's just not even close to how much people actually need. They've done the studies, and people need somewhere between 2,000 to 10,000 IUs to actually get your blood levels of vitamin D high enough so that you're going to be in the quote-unquote sweet spot. And this is something that Rhonda Patrick talks about a lot. She talks about this sweet spot of vitamin D, and that's between 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter in your blood. And that is what has been associated with having a lower risk of all of these diseases that we talked about: the heart disease, the cancer, the diabetes, early death, all of these things. If you are in this range between 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter, then you are going to have a lower risk of all of these different diseases. But what do? Do you just take handfuls of vitamin D until you start to feel better, until your energy comes up? Well, no, that's not the best way to do it. What you should do is you need to get your blood levels checked. And it's become pretty easy and pretty cheap to get your blood levels of vitamin D checked. You can talk to your primary care provider, or you could even get an outpatient test done. They're fairly cheap, somewhere between $10 to $100 is about where they're at right now, even if you are paying out of pocket. Sometimes your insurance will pay for it, especially if you are having some symptoms, and you can get your primary care doctor to write for it. Sometimes you can get insurance, but even if you can't, you can get these blood levels checked outpatient for pretty cheap. So it's really important that you actually get your blood levels checked, see where you're at. Are you already in it? Maybe you don't need to take any at all. Maybe you're in the 25% of the population that has adequate levels. But most likely you're not. Most likely you are deficient, and so you're going to need to figure out how many IUs of vitamin D3 you need to take each day in order to get those blood levels up. And again, some people it takes 2,000, some people it's 5,000, some people it's 10,000 IUs a day. Some people have polymorphisms that make it more difficult for them to produce the vitamin D, even if you are supplementing with it. So some people need to take a lot more, but you can only know that if you're actually getting your blood levels checked. So I hope this has been helpful. I mean, this is something that is so important, considering it increases our risks of all of these different chronic diseases that our population is suffering from, and the fact that 3/4 of our population just doesn't have enough of it because we're not outside and getting exposed to the sun anymore. I mean, that's what early humans didn't have this problem, because they were all outside. They weren't wearing all the clothes that we were wearing, and they were getting exposed to the sunlight. And so now this is really a modern problem, and we really need to address it because it's affecting so many different things. So I hope this has been helpful. Have a great day.